Hey there, it's Dr. Justin Marcagiani. Welcome to Beyond Wellness Radio, where we provide actionable health information on a week-to-week basis that can help you improve your life. Feel free, head over to justinhealth.com, where we have various opt-in video series on more in-depth health topics such as female hormones, thyroid, and gut health. Also, while you're there, feel free and schedule a consult with myself, Dr. J, and or my colleagues. We're available worldwide to provide natural health support for any of your major health issues. Again, welcome to the podcast and enjoy the show. And we are live. It's Dr. J in the house with Evan Brand. Really excited. Today, we're going to be talking about the allergy hormone connection. We did a nice chat last week on natural solutions, functional medicine solutions for allergies. So I'm actually very excited to go over the hormone connection. So we won't be going into as much on the supplements or things that we do on that side of the fence. We'll put a link down below so you can see that first podcast. This is going to be building off of that podcast. So if you're coming in late to the game, you want to take a look at that first podcast. We're going to be really diving in and connecting the hormone piece to it, because there's a lot of people that have estrogen dominance, menopause, hormonal issues, imbalances in their adrenal function. And part of that could be driving their allergy issue. And you really got to look at everything holistically. And we're going to be connecting the dots for you guys today. It's always context, context, context. Evan, how are we doing today, man?
Doing good. Always good to see you on a Monday. It's like the best part of my week is to start off with a bang. So I actually got a lot of good feedback last week on that podcast too. You know, you and I kind of joke about how it's a thankless job because we'll put out an episode, get thousands and thousands of downloads and not hear much. But I actually had a lot of people message me and said that allergy one we did was one of the best of the year. So appreciate the feedback, and we're excited to take it a step further.
Love it. Absolutely love it. So out of the gates here, I mean, there's kind of maybe three categories of patients that I see really benefit from a lot of this out of the gates. So first are going to be our menopausal females, peri and menopausal. There's one study that we'll talk about here today that showed menopausal and perimenopausal women having 2 times the likelihood of having allergy issues. Part of that has to do with the drop in progesterone and the imbalance in progesterone to estrogen. That can skew the immune system. The other one would be a cycling female who has significant estrogen dominance, massive imbalances in progesterone and estrogen. That's another kind of category. And then the last would be someone, it could be male or female, that has significant imbalances in cortisol, right? We know when you're having allergic reactions, you're developing and producing all these inflammatory cytokines, right? Interleukins, cytokines, and these are pro-inflammatory. And our adrenal glands make a natural anti-inflammatory hormone called cortisol. And cortisol naturally will help combat and balance out some of the pro-inflammatory cytokines. So if we have significant imbalances in cortisol, where cortisol is too high and we're too catabolic, or it's too low and we're not able to combat the inflammation, that can really be, I think, the starting mechanism of this whole allergy cascade.
Yeah, and you and I were talking before we hit record about, well, why is this such a problem now? Because you look at like tribal societies and such, and you don't really see any discussion or any big issue with menopause. And we were talking about the difference in the lifestyle. Of course, you don't have the stress as much as we do in the tribal societies as you do in modern society. You've got more family support group. You've got parents and grandparents and the whole tribe helping to pinch hit in some of the family roles. And so really we've lost our tribe. And that baseline stress is really just so strong on people that when there's the transition to menopause, the adrenals have already been weak from 40 years of parenting with just you and your spouse, that, you know, it's the straw that breaks the camel's back.
Oh, I agree. I think you also have a lot more environmental toxins. You have increased nutritional deficiencies. You have a lot more pesticides in the environment, all those different things. Now, I imagine if you're like, living out in the forest or something in some kind of a hut or teepee or some kind of a structure, there's probably a lot of environmental molds, just things decaying around you. So there's probably a lot of that, probably a lot of rain getting in there. So it's amazing. Probably a lot more natural mold exposure, maybe being out there, but a lot less stress on the other side of the fence as well. So I think we know stress plays a major role on your adrenals, because cortisol is a natural stress hormone. It's anti-inflammatory. It's a glucocorticosteroid, which means it pertains to stress and inflammation. It's also a very powerful energizer hormone. And cortisol can pull from progesterone. So we know progesterone does have anti-inflammatory effects. So if we're chronically producing cortisol, that can really start to skew this estrogen progesterone balance. Because as cortisol is being stimulated due to chronic stress and inflammation, progesterone can be pulled downstream to make it, because progesterone is a building block of cortisol. And if progesterone is being pulled downstream, what can happen to that natural ratio of estrogen to progesterone? It can skew. Now, typically speaking, progesterone is always going to be higher than estrogen in general. Usually it's about a 23 to 25 times ratio of progesterone to estrogen. But if that ratio starts to drop, so when we start talking about estrogen going up and progesterone dropping, we're talking about that more in relative terms, not absolute. We're talking about the ratio dropping, not the absolute numbers going in opposite directions, just to make sure that's clear for everyone.
Yeah, let's also tie in the gut piece. I mean, a lot of people responded to me and said, wow, I didn't have a clue that bacterial overgrowth in my gut could create the allergies. But in the same vein, the gut issues could actually create the hormone issues. So let's talk about that for a minute. When you and I are looking at stool tests, and we're going to look at beta glucuronidase being high due to a bacterial overgrowth, now we have the recirculation of hormones happening as well. So there may be this point where we come in with some of the herbal antihistamines that we talked about, but now we also may need to come in with some of the glucuronidation pathway support, like your calcium D-glucarate, maybe the sulfur-based amino acids, glutathione, broccoli seed extract, like broccoli sprouts. We like to use those. So that's another mechanism, I think, that once again, the allergists are going to miss. They're not going to give you calcium D-glucarate, but they might need to.
100%. Yep, 100%. I'm going to read a study here. I'll get the exact article here for you down the road. But here is the quote. Study in Northern Europe included over 2,300 women and tracked their respiratory health from 2000 to 2012. They found the odds of getting asthma, quote, were more than twice as high for women going through menopausal transition or after menopause compared to non-menopausal women. So there's something that's happening at around peri and or menopausal timeframe. So let's say early to mid 40s to early to mid 50s, right? There's that time frame that's happening. I think the big thing that's probably happening is you're having a drop in progesterone. I think what's starting to happen is you're having FSH and LH starting to increase. And I think you're also starting to rely more on the adrenal glands to fill in the gap. And if cortisol is out of balance or imbalance there and there's not enough DHEA, you're going to find a real deficit in some of these hormones. And you're not going to have the same inflammatory backup generator support, if you will, from the adrenal gland. I think that's a big mechanism that's active here. And that's why you're going to see more peri and menopausal women affected. And again, a lot of women are chronically stressed and they kind of fall into that perimenopausal category younger and younger. I'm seeing a lot more perimenopausal symptoms in women in their 30s and early 40s now, which is really interesting. I mean, perimenopause is that time frame before menopause. Usually menopause is when you have 1 year, 12 months without a period, but you can start to see perimenopausal symptoms start to happen younger and younger and younger, I think because of chronic stress. And that could be hot flash issues. Of course, that could be just a lot of the PMS issues. Usually you start to see missing cycles, hot flash issues. You can also see a lot of mood changes, vaginal changes, sleep issues, weight issues. You can see mood, irregularity, loss of libido. And now again, a lot of those also connect with PMS too. So it's kind of hard to connect the two, but usually you start to see missing cycles and starting to see some of those hot temperature issues starting to occur. And then of course, a lot of vaginal dryness or a lot of mucous membrane dryness issues as well.
Yeah, that was my next question for you is why are you seeing this in younger women? I mean, because this is kind of a new phenomenon, right? I mean, in the last 10 years, you're saying this thing is ramping up significantly. So you think it's just the stress in the 30s to early 40 women that maybe previously wasn't as intense?
Yeah, chronic stress, chronic inflammation. I think a lot of women. I mean, this is in general. This is people in general. Just a lot of nutritional deficiencies due to chronic poor diets. A lot of women, if they, 20 plus years ago, they were in that low fat era and they weren't getting good healthy fat and good healthy cholesterol. I mean, that's going to put a lot of stress on your hormones because you need these building blocks to make these hormones, right? Hormones made from cholesterol. Your body makes a lot of cholesterol, but it can never make enough. And you need a lot of important fat soluble vitamins and cholesterol from good healthy animal products to ideally make it optimally, right? It's hard to do that on a vegan vegetarian diet because you're just missing a lot of those fat soluble vitamins and long chain omega-3 fatty acids that you get from high quality fish and such. So that's, I think, a big thing as well. And also fats play a really important anti-inflammatory role. right? We know good healthy fats like fish and coconut have good anti-inflammatory benefits. And we know a lot of the omega-6 in plant-based diets can be more inflammatory. And a lot of the good healthy omega-3s on the plant-based side that come from flax or chia, right? These are going to be like alpha linolenic acid. These are going to be omega-3s. They have to get converted downstream, and they go through different enzymes like delta-5 desaturase that makes that conversion. And if you have insulin resistance or inflamed, it's going to be harder to maximally convert that. Some people say maybe only 20% is converted. So there's a lot of conversion issues downstream. We see the same problem with vitamin A. So if you're a plant-based and you're relying on a lot of beta carotene, for instance, in carrots and plant-based products, you may not get a good conversion because that has to get converted. So if you're getting vitamin A from grass-fed liver or beef, or let's say cod liver oil, right, or egg yolks, that's a maximal conversion there because you're getting active vitamin A in there versus having to rely on a conversion. And the more inflamed you are and the more stressed you are, it's hard to convert and activate a lot of these nutrients.
Yeah, well, you made a good point too. You got a lot more women doing things they shouldn't be doing, like going on strict vegan diets, doing plant-based burgers, getting off of real whole food. So I think I'm trying to just answer my own question in my head here. Like, why is this being ramped up in younger women? And I think there's a combination of factors, like always, but man, you got Bill Gates and other people pushing so hard. Just get off meat. Meat's bad. Meat's bad. There's still so much unbrainwashing that we have to do in the population. So I really hope folks listening into the podcast, we really hope that you all are eating good quality fats, especially women. We really don't want you to be afraid of those.
Yeah. And kind of my pitch on meat versus plant-based products, it's pretty simple. So number one, plants bioaccumulate nutrition. So the benefit that you get from animals is they bioaccumulate plants. So for instance, about 1 pound of grass-fed meat, it takes about 8 pounds of plant matter to make that grass-fed meat. And so animals, if I make sure I say it correctly, animals bioaccumulate plant-based matter. So you get a lot more bioaccumulated nutrition. So for instance, 16 cups of kale gets you the amount of protein that's in 6 ounces of grass-fed beef, right? There's a bioaccumulation of amino acids and fat-soluble vitamins and even things like zinc. And then when you go and look at the bioavailability, of course, plants have a lot more anti-nutrients than animal products do. So you have a lot more anti-nutrients binding up oxalates, phytates, mineral blockers, protein blockers that make it harder to break down a lot of the nutrients in plants. And then my sentient kind of emotional argument is it's all about having the largest amount of nutrition per death. Okay. It's really important. You have nutrients per death. If I have 1 cow killed for my family, that's enough to feed my family the whole year. Right. If you look at a lot of the factory farming involved in like, let's say raising high quality plants. And again, this may not be the broccoli or kale in your backyard, right? But if you look at on a wide scale, kind of monoculture kind of scale, there's all kinds of rabbits and snakes and badgers and all kinds of things that get caught up in the combines when they harvest a lot of these plants. Okay. So there's a lot of deaths happening. And so then you got to say, well, is that badger's death equal to this cow's death, right? Then you got to look at and kind of weigh, well, whose life's worth more? And then the third argument, it's a little bit deeper, is, well, are you taking a life when you're killing a plant? And I think my personal belief is it takes life to sustain life. So everything that you kill, whether it's plant or animal, has to have some level of life force to it. And then you're just playing this game of, well, whose life matters more? Obviously, I can emotionally connect with the cow because it's got a mommy and a daddy and it's cute and cuddly, maybe not with the kale, right? But all life, it takes life to sustain life. So there has to be some level of life in that plant for it to sustain you. Same thing with the animals. And so keep that there. And of course, when we talk about animals, we're talking about non-factory farming. We're talking about organic. We're talking about super high quality raising, no hormones, no antibiotics, 1 bad day for that animal, and that's it, right? So I just want to differentiate that for people that are kind of listening and on the fence with that.
Yeah, well said. Well said. I like the way you put it. All right. So this study and paper that you had, it also mentioned vitamin D. Now, just in case we didn't mention it last time, I just want to make sure we mention it now, that there is definitely a link between more severe asthma symptoms and low vitamin D. So that's a very, very easy, low-hanging fruit that should be addressed if you're working on some sort of a histamine allergy protocol. You've already hit upon increasing omega-3s, your nuts, your seeds, your cold water fish. You're doing your low histamine diet if necessary. You're treating the gut infections, but then boom, if you miss vitamin D, that's easy.
110%. And again, the other component I would say is glutathione. We need that through digesting good proteins, right? So if we're chronically stressed, let's connect the dots here. So if you're chronically stressed, you're pouring out cortisol, your adrenals are in this fight or flight kind of sympathetic dominant state, you're over secreting cortisol. And again, that can also look in a chronic state like low cortisol, right? Your cortisol doesn't get low unless at some point it was chronically overstimulated. So some people think or feel like, oh my God, like my adrenals must be so overstimulated right now because I feel so off, but it's possible that they could be in this state of total dysregulation and they're on the lower side. So either way, chronic cortisol stress is going to affect your nervous system because the sympathetic nervous system is what's engaged when you have a lot of adrenal stress, and the sympathetic nervous system affects digestion, right? It's the parasympathetic that is the rest, the digest, the energize, repair. So if we don't have enough parasympathetics going, it's going to be harder to digest and break down our foods, absorb our nutrients. And this can really, one, start to create indigestion. That can create more SIBO and dysbiosis and bad bacterial imbalances. And those bad bacterial imbalances can negatively impact our immune system. And an immune system that's not correctly primed, it's overly sensitive and going after allergens that are not like a threat to us, that's going to create allergy issues. So you see how this hormone, adrenal, nervous system, digestion, gut, immune connection kind of evolves, right? You can really connect it to a lot of different things because they really dovetail so importantly.
Yeah. Now, the good news is once you get the proper labs, it's less overwhelming, because when you're saying that back to me, I'm like, oh crap, how would somebody even know where to start with it? But once you get the data, it's really easy for us to go and look at the piece of paper and go, okay, look, here's the gut analysis, here's the hormone analysis. And then on the gut analysis, we get a clue into the hormones too, right? Because we'll see that beta glucuronidase marker. If that's high, we know, oh crap, there's recirculation going on. So this hormone profile, now we have answers even deeper. We have a root cause of the root cause. Why is the hormone profile looking like this? Well, because of the gut profile. And then you piece in the oats, you piece in the chemical profiles, the mold profiles. You look at where does somebody live environmentally? How much outdoor exposure do they have? Then we look at the diet piece. It makes it much, much more digestible. So I just want people listening, you may be able to pull out little pieces of the puzzle like, oh, I'm going to boost vitamin D. I'm going to do tenofend or quercetin to stabilize it. But really, you got to get the data. So that's what we always want to lean upon for a couple of reasons. One, it helps us to shorten the treatment duration, because then you're not guessing and checking by just giving herbal antihistamines and sending people on their way. But number two, it's a good compliance piece, because we could show people, look, we have the reason of why you're feeling like crap. Stick through this protocol. It works so much better. There were times where clinically I would talk to someone and we would say, well, it sounds like this, it sounds like that. Maybe budget was a concern in a couple of cases, but we would just give somebody a guess and check protocol. But then we always had to go back to testing later. So really upfront, if you have this going on, get some data so you know what you're up against. You're going to, definitely shorten your timeline, and you're going to shorten and decrease your cost. Like if you were like me, I'd go buy this supplement, I'd buy that. You have the supplement graveyard. You're spending much, much more money doing that as opposed to getting a dialed in protocol made for you.
110%. Yeah. If you can see what's going on, it's going to help you be a lot more compliant for sure. And then one other connection here is we know that women who are overweight, they have twice the likelihood of having allergies as well. And again, I think this goes with men as well. When you're overweight, fat is a major reservoir of interleukins and cytokines and inflammation. So you can make a lot of inflammation via your fat cells. So the more inflamed you are, right? The whole thing with allergies and asthma and all these different things is the immune reaction that you're having is an increase in cytokines and interleukins that are pro-inflammatory, right? And so when you have exposure to endogenous allergens in the environment, that's kind of what's creating an anti-inflammatory response. And then your body is then over secreting more inflammatory compounds that kind of add to the mix, right? So your body's overdoing it, and you have natural anti-inflammatory compounds via cortisol and progesterone in your body. And if you don't have enough reserves there to kind of, let's say, cover that up or neutralize it, it can really create more and more problems. That's a big one. I mean, here's the summary. Estrogen's role in allergic disease remains complex as allergic disease continues to increase in the prevalence and affect women disproportionately, gaining a fuller understanding of its effects. Basically, it's talking about xenoestrogens and hormonal imbalances driving more allergy issue. It does it because it modulates the immune system, T cells, immune cells, B cells. It's affecting all of the immune system because we're throwing a lot more histamine, leukotrienes, and other immune compounds that are just putting our body into a more inflammatory state, if you will.
Makes sense. So, I mean, that once again, we're back to external exposure, meaning potentially environmental. But when we say environmental, that's not just nature. It's not like that anymore. It's contaminated. You've got
Yeah,
the
so
xenoestrogen.
exactly. Estrogens may polarize T cells and cause more Th2 immune response. That's kind of more of our antibody immune response. So you may get a lot more of that. Estrogen promotes the class switching of B cells to immunoglobulin E. IgE is going to be those are eosinophils, so it's going to promote more and a more allergenic side of your immune system via eosinophils. And then, of course, estrogen promotes the degranulation of mast cell basophils. So basophils are in your blood. They're immune cells, just like eosinophils are. When they start to go into your tissues, they become mast cells, essentially, and mast cells produce histamine. And we know histamine increases all these leukotrienes and cytokines, which are part of this whole allergenic immune reaction. So you can see how all these things kind of, roll downstream and create more problems. So when people are listening to this and you're like, what the heck is he saying? Just focus on this. Just go upstream. Anytime you get overwhelmed, always go upstream. Okay. Everything kind of gets more granular and nuanced as you go downstream. So hormonal imbalances in progesterone, estrogen, especially when you start to have more estrogen dominance, that creates more of a pro-allergic response. When cortisol starts to go out of balance, typically either overly high acutely or chronically low in a more chronic situation, that's going to create more allergies. The more your sympathetic nervous system is in fight or flight due to chronic hormonal stress, that can create more allergies as well. It affects your ability to digest, rest, repair, and absorb nutrients, and it sets up your digestive tract for inadequate enzyme and acid levels. And it also throws off your gut microbiome, start to have more dysbiosis, and that can throw off your immune system. Why? Because 80% of our immune system is in our intestines. Our GALT, which is our gastric associated lymphoid tissue, that's our stomach, and our MALT, our mucosal associated lymphoid tissue, that's in our small intestine. Hope that makes sense.
It does. So if you're still drinking out of single-use plastic water bottles, you got to quit doing that, because you were reading through it kind of fast, but basically what I pulled out, you were saying that the xenoestrogens, those have been linked to stimulating or irritating the mast cells. Was that right?
Yeah. Let me just read this summary here. This is a big one. So female hormones appear to play a significant role in allergic diseases, with estrogen's effect being the most well-studied. Estrogen influences immune cells, favoring that Th2 immune response, and it causes our B cells. Our B cells are basically our body's ability to make antibodies, right? We have 5 antibodies, right? Neutrophils, lymphocytes, eosinophils, monocytes, basophils. How do I remember it? Never let monkeys eat bananas. Okay, that's how we learn about that in doctoral school. And so we start to have a lot of these B cells, which, they can be anything of these 5. They start to go more towards eosinophils. And again, EEE for allergy. That's how we remember that. EEE for allergy. Now, with the exception is parasites can also increase eosinophils. Therefore, parasite infections can increase your chance of allergies too. See how all these things connect over? So the potential role for estrogen in asthma is supported by epidemiological evidence in the increase of asthma prevalence and severity in adult women, and by associating estrogen with changes in airway mechanics and inflammation. However, the mechanism by which it may act is quite complex. We know that exogenous compounds of estrogen activity may influence allergic diseases. How? Well, if we're getting exposure to potentially birth control pills or plastics or pesticides in the water, hormones in the meat, all of these things may potentially throw us more into an estrogen dominant state. Now, this study is not saying it. I believe it's really going to be that hormone ratio. So it's more that estrogen dominance, not necessarily high amounts of estrogen. That definitely is part of it. But I think also that ratio or that, right here, And it says with the effects dependent on the concentration of hormones and the concomitant presence or absence of factors such as progesterone. So it is kind of alluding to that the absence of progesterone can also throw that immune system into a more allergenic response, which is what I'm highlighting earlier. It's more estrogen dominance than it is just estrogen by itself.
Makes
But
sense.
both
Yeah.
can play a role.
Makes sense. Okay. And I've got a couple papers here. It's talking about estrogen is very stimulatory to the mast cells to release histamine. And then the excess estrogen also is going to downregulate the DAO enzyme that clears histamine.
Oh, bingo. There you go.
At the same time, histamine stimulates the ovaries to make more estrogen. So the net result can be a vicious cycle of estrogen to histamine to estrogen to histamine, whereas progesterone comes in and stabilizes the mast cells and actually upregulates DAO production and therefore can reduce histamine. So many symptoms of estrogen dominance are actually symptoms of histamine or mast cell activation. And then we know like mast cells and histamine play a role in endometriosis and also PMDD. So that's pretty cool. And this is an epidemic problem. You and I kind of talk about it like it's this nuanced thing, but no, this is going on in hundreds of millions of women around the world, and probably more so in women than men, but this issue can definitely happen in men also.
Yeah, so I don't want men to kind of feel left out here. There's a lot of men that have a lot of estrogen imbalance issues as well due to the environment, poor detoxification, gynecomastia, excessive just being overweight. There's some of those same mechanisms that are happening here. Remember, fats can produce estrogens as well. So I don't want our guy friends to be left out in this here. So just know there's still a lot of the same mechanisms that are at play. Of course, we're not going to be, hitting the hormones the same way, but we're going to be looking at the adrenals the same way. We're going to be cutting out environmental hormones. We're going to be looking at detoxification and your body's ability to clear these excessive hormones. Of course, if we're seeing women that come in with birth control pills, we're going to try to hit that via a different mechanism without throwing off the hormones. So there's a lot of ways we can hit this. I'm really happy that we're talking about this because this is something that I see endemic in a lot of my female patients and male too. So I'm glad that we're on top of this. And we're not going to be going over too much on the supplement side for this because we talked about it last time. So please click down below and look for that previous podcast. But the big thing I would say with my female patients and or hormone patients listening is we're going to look at potentially using endogenous progesterone depending on the levels. We're going to use herbs to help modulate estrogen and progesterone. So some of those herbs could be chaste tree or maca or dong quai. There's a lot of other herbs that we use to modulate that. We may use things like ashwagandha, rhodiola, ginseng, things to help modulate cortisol. Of course, we're going to be fixing a lot of the diet and lifestyle strategies, whether it's blood sugar, inflammatory foods, sleep. Of course, all of the healthy diet and lifestyle things are foundational. So I'm not going to go into all of that because that's all with a podcast within itself. But just kind of keep that in mind. Those are all going to be part of the foundational principles that we utilize. And also I use other palliative things like natural antihistamine degranulators, which look at that previous podcast. And then also we talk about sinus flush protocols and high quality air filtration, which are going to be important components, but see that previous podcast for more instruction on that.
Yeah, well said. Last thing here, just a note. It was talking about the whole progesterone, estrogen, mast cell connection and why progesterone, of course, is going to stabilize mast cells and upregulate DAO. And it made just a note here. This is why most women feel better early in the luteal phase when progesterone is higher. So if there is like a cyclical pattern to your issues, pay attention to your cycle. That's probably a good clue there that it is progesterone deficiency.
Yeah. And part of the reason why women feel bad those last couple of days or a week before is because that's where we have the biggest drop in progesterone. So it's this big drop that happens, and usually it happens a little too early. And that's what kind of gets this whole cascade of PMS or PMDD happening, right? And it's usually just that fallout in progesterone too soon and too hard. Usually around day 21 to 24, it can just fall out harder versus gradually coming down around day 27 or so.
And you're saying we can help blunt the drop with some of the strategies, the herbs, the nutrients, getting rid of the excess estrogens and relationship, all of it.
Yep. And don't get me wrong, utilizing some of these natural antihistamines like we talk about in podcast 1 is helpful, but we just have to always draw a line. Is this the root cause? And so I always want to make sure patients know this is not the root cause, but it's buying us time and it's helping us deal with the histamine while we work on all the other diet and lifestyle and hormonal things. And then over time, you become less reliant on those things. And it's better than taking medications that cause you to be drowsy and brain foggy throughout the day, or even things that add more steroids in your body too, which could be more destructive.
Absolutely. Well, if you need to reach out and get help, please do. If you need to reach Dr. J, you can at his website, justinhealth.com, and he does consults worldwide via phone, FaceTime, Skype, however you need to reach him. He's there. If you need to reach out to me, my website, evanbrand.com. We have all the information in regards to scheduling. It's a piece of cake, and you can book a intro call to discuss your symptoms, your goals, see if you're a good fit for care. We'd love to help you out, get you off the roller coaster, get you off the merry-go-round, unless you like that kind of thing. But these medical merry-go-rounds are not something fun. So we want to try to get you off of that.
Totally. I had 3 patients this last week, 2 women, 1 man, who had a significant 80% reduction in lifelong allergies doing a lot of these strategies. So, I mean, these things aren't esoteric. Like, there's a lot of thought leaders out there that just talk about things, but they aren't in the clinical trenches with their sleeves rolled up, dealing with people working on this and actually getting results. So, I have strong experience in this. Evan does too. And we're seeing it. So when you guys are hearing the things we're talking about, this isn't theoretical. This transcends what you're reading in a study. This is real. So I only say that just to give you guys a lot of motivation and hope that if you're listening, just start applying it. And then if you're feeling confused or overwhelmed, we're here for you. There'll be a link down below where you can click to reach out to us, and we're here to help y'all. And if this information resonates, please find a family member or friend that you can share it with, because we really appreciate that.
Awesome. Well, take good care. We'll be in touch next week.
Hey, Evan, good chatting with you. Have a good one, y'all. Bye now.
See ya.
Bye.
Got a question for Dr. J? Go to beyondwellnessradio.com and click the questions button. Then tune in to hear the answer. Also, if you like the show, click below to review us on iTunes. For more Beyond Wellness Radio, go to beyondwellnessradio.com.